I wrote a 9,000 word essay, recorded and edited a 40-minute video with 330 magic card images on the subject, but it's not that serious. Being an enjoyable person to play against will get you farther in Commander than any deck building choice. Indeed in life. I'm HeyWoah, started playing Magic in the dark, Commander since it was called EDH, and Sheldon Memory once killed me with comeuppance. Here to make a tired-sounding but earnestly helpful guide on how to build a Commander deck with the lessons I've learned and seen learned over the years, which I consider more important than ever, seeing as Commander is how most new players approach Magic the Gathering nowadays. Without the normal years of experience in 1v1 60-card formats leading up to it. And looking at their decks, I'm sorry to say that it shows, but it's not their fault, the explanation's right there. On brackets, my recommendation is to start with 3, as that's by far the largest pool of people you'll find to play with, and that mostly trumps any other considerations. Bracket 1 is a meme that content creators pretend to play, bracket 2 is boring, and bracket 4 was officially defined so poorly that it instantly became what everyone who used to enjoy high-power Commander hoped it would not, which is Turbo Diet CEDH. Rest in peace, 8 out of 10. Anyway, let's begin. Part 1, picking a Commander. Your Commander is a card you ostensibly always have access to, until it's too expensive or gets turned into an elk. If it starts out expensive, that's bad, as you can't cast it early, you need even more mana to have lands up to protect it the turn you cast it, and also you get to cast it fewer times per game. And Commanders tend to die a lot. That's something to free your mind about early. Your stuff, in general, is going to get blowed up all the time. Learn to let go. In a vacuum, 6 mana is a lot for a Commander, and lends itself more to finishers and payoffs rather than I need this guy out all the time. But because you always start with it, and can cast it multiple times, you can think of it as representing maybe 15 cards in your deck of a certain role, without having to actually put those cards in. I made that number up, but it's the thought that counts. For instance, if your Commander kills everyone when he enters, like Jetmir, then the finisher slots in your deck don't need to be so numerous, because Jetmir has that covered. You don't run none, typically, but he gives you some breathing room. If your Commander costs 2 and taps for mana, then you don't need to lean on 9 Rampant Growths. Maybe you get to skip right to Sky Shroud claims. In other words, your Commander frees up main deck slots. If you have an idea for a prospective Commander, think about what job it's doing, how important that job is, and how many extra slots you might get for running him. Now, it isn't all about shifting main deck slots. Sometimes you want a unique effect and you simply can't get it by putting cards in the 99, because nothing else does it. This kind of deck can be a struggle because you don't want to build something that absolutely cannot function without the Commander out. But it can be rewarding if you balance it just right. Or you might want a critical mass of one type of effect, say damage doublers. So your Commander that also doubles damage isn't necessarily saving space, he's spewing. Now at this point you might be wondering something, and you are right. What if my Commander draws cards? Yep, you cracked the code. Card advantage in the command zone is mostly the best thing to be doing, because drawing cards is mostly the best thing to be doing, especially in colors that otherwise suck at it. A proper deck list uses up so many slots on card draw and engines that I consider a card advantage Commander the default state. Commanders who aren't doing that really need to be doing something above and beyond to give up so much. And you'll have much less room in the deck since you gotta make up for all that card draw your Commander doesn't do. Big warning here that I've seen so many Commander decks taken apart over. Everyone wants to be a special snowflake. Same dude, I'm not immune. There's 4,000 Captain America equipment decks, but I'm one of the 260 Ardent Chroms. It is what it is. Finding an obscure Commander or interaction can be rewarding and cool. But don't lose sight of actual fun while playing the game. A lot of decks people make are more fun in theory than in practice, if any at all. When you reveal your Commander before a game, it says something. And some Commanders are problems. Or they are seen as problems, which in a social multiplayer format is the same thing. Problem Commanders basically win the game if you get to untap with them. The play pattern that inspires, in that case, is your opponents feel like they need to not ever let you resolve or untap with your Commander out, or they'll lose. A game where your Commander gets countered or killed 3 times, which means you didn't really do anything for 12 player turns, and then you lose. How fun was that? Or conversely, you cast Turgid on turn 4, no one has anything, you untap, Death Cloud, everybody scoops. Both of these games are quite unsatisfying for public tables. Generally leave that kind of stuff to playing with your friends. Does this mean that the real minigame of Commander is like the hipster Olympics of hiding your power level? scouring Scryfall for the most innocuous appearing commander, but then filling the deck list with the hot shit. Some people do that, but honestly not really. That's having a mindset of trying to get away with something. This is casual battlecruiser. You could sum up this whole thing with a bit of a shift. Pick a commander that appears appropriate for the bracket you want to play in. If yours tends to inspire 3v1s out of fear, it probably belongs in bracket 4. If yours looks like a bracket 2 but plays like a bracket 4, again, probably belongs there. Too many times I've heard a commander player complain that their deck didn't even get to, quote, do its thing, because people stopped it. But in many cases, doing its thing was synonymous with just winning without any meaningful steps in between. You should endeavor to build around interactions or gameplay loops that aren't just I win buttons. This is also one of the reasons I say that your deck should be able to run clean as a whistle without the commander in play. Sometimes, and even often, you might not have a choice. Note, some people choose a commander last, after they filled their deck with 3-color good stuff cards they've always wanted to play with. And that can work very well, if it's your first deck, or maybe your first deck in those colors. But I would hesitate to recommend it beyond that. I would also generally avoid pure tribal decks, unless you find deck building to be a chore. And that would be wild to me because deck building is like the greatest thing about Magic, but to each their own. In pure tribal, you're going to look up the best 29 elves ever printed and just put them in the deck. It kind of builds itself. And it often slots itself into a penalty box of how good that creature type factually happens to be. I've seen a lot of demon tribal decks that just don't ever do anything, and that's no fun to figure out too late. Tends to be more susceptible than normal aggro to board wipes, as the first several slivers don't do much. You have to climb the mountain of synergy all over again. After picking a commander, do the lands first, no exceptions. This is the foundation of your deck, and doing this first prevents you from cheating on the number of them later once you're looking at all your pet cards in a 125 card deck list. Put 40 lands in there to start. That's 24 lands in a 60 card deck. That's normal. Remember the 3-land keep rule. With 40 lands, the average number in your opening hand is 2.83, which means including a free mull, you're at least keeping an opening hand that isn't mono-screwed right off the bat. I want you to cast your spells. And the more keepable hands you see, the more picky you can afford to be at what kind of spells are in it. Furthermore, unlike Legacy, where brainstorming away 2 extra lands plus shuffle was a common play, in Commander, land drops are incredibly important throughout the whole measure of the game. You want to be making those every turn. Keeping a risky 1-lander isn't just about sweating to top deck your second land. You would still need your 3rd and 4th basically in a row. Throw it back. If you think 40 lands sounds entirely unnecessary, trust me, I have a process, at least follow along. Some say the best land in Commander is Gaia's Cradle, or Ancient Tomb, Field of the Dead, maybe Beta Duels, or Urza's Saga. I've even heard them say that Command Tower was a mistake. These are all wrong. The most powerful land ever made is the fetch land, and it's not even close. Play every single one that can grab a land of a color you play. Yes, that includes Wooded Foothills and Izzet, etc. I want you to not be color screwed. I want you to cast your spells. Playing all the fetches is just about non-negotiable unless you're in monocolor. Although it's even good in monocolor decks sometimes if you're playing stuff like Crucible Worlds or Savine's Reclamation. But monocolor in general is the exception where you often don't run fetches. This is a 100-card format. We are not deck thinning here. We're color fixing and sometimes shuffling for value. Wizards reprinted these things into oblivion in an effort to make them accessible, and largely succeeded as they're 1/10 the cost they used to be. And it's good that they did, because they are so necessary. And so, because of all that, your first inclusions, even before Command Tower, are every applicable fetch land, plus Ravnica Duels and a Triome. It is the bare minimum for any multicolor land base. If you need to cut corners on cost for your lands, drop anything else to maintain this core, even if every other land in your deck is a basic. This almost isn't even hyperbole. With 9 fetches and a Triome, you have better than a 50% chance to get all your colors turn 1, and that's before the mulligan and the draw. Side note, what about Prismatic Vista or the weaker version Fabled Passage? In 1 or 2 color decks, sure, or in Landfall or Delve, but not generally since they cannot search for duels. Again, we're not deck thinning here. What about all those 10-cent Terramorphic Expanse fetches that put a basic into play tapped? Never play with those cards. They cannot search for duels, and the land always enters tapped. 2 strikes you're out. They're 10 cents for a reason, and you are worth more than that. After the fetch core, our goal during pass 1 should be generic equal access to all colors as soon as possible and never or almost never tapped. So command tower, reflecting pool, 2 or more opponents cycle, 2 or more lands cycle, activate only if cycle, tapped unless type cycle, equal basic lands, possibly even pain lands, filter lands, or pathway if in 2 color. Don't worry about feasibility yet, we'll get to it. This is ideal template land for now. If a land enters the battlefield tapped, it's basically a spell. And that's worth it for spell-like effects, such as Field of the Dead or Valakut. But the only mana lands that should ever enter tapped in your deck are Triome and optionally Surveil lands. Surveil because it's half of a spell anyway and you can choose to fetch for it when you don't need an untapped land, and Triome because it instantly fixes all 3 of your color requirements on turn 1 and it also cycles, so it isn't the worst top deck. Why don't we want any mana lands that enter tapped? Because if the land you draw enters tapped on turn 3, you have 2 mana and might end up doing nothing with 3 cost cards in your hand. Tap lands have a chance of negatively time walking yourself, and that's a lot worse when you have to wait for 3 other people to go before it's your turn again. Can I run a bunch of tap lands if I don't have lots of 1 and 2 mana plays? My curve is higher and my deck is slower, so it should be fine to sacrifice early game mana. Still no. Remember, you don't always draw your cards in their intended mana curve order. It's arguably even more important when you're holding an impactful 6-drop, top deck a tap land, and have to pass the turn with 5 land you did nothing with, or couldn't play 2 spells on turn 7. Fetches let you run a phantom 11 copies of your 1 Triome or Surveil land, but with the benefit of getting to choose the most opportune time to deploy it. Best of both worlds. What about those dual-faced cards? It's a spell on the front and a land you would never have played otherwise on the back. Those are spells. They compete against other spells for inclusion in your deck, not against lands. As you move beyond bracket 3, or maybe get more advanced at Magic in general, then MDFCs that enter untapped if you pay 3 life may start to replace lands. But don't do that until step 3, and once we get to step 3, I'm going to tell you not to do that again because it's a bad deck building habit to get into before you really have a feel for when it's appropriate. When new players do this, it's usually just another way to cheat on land count, and then you end up with a shitty mana base all over again. And having a mana base that isn't shitty is basically the most important takeaway from my guide. Anyway, what about that old adage where you take a land out for every arcane signet you play? I don't really like that advice because I see what new players do with it and the abuse needs to stop. Leaning into this idea makes your deck randomly more explosive, but also more fragile, more prone to having choked up early turns where you have to decide between turn 3 Signet Pass or Guruk's Uprising, and mid-game onward it causes you to be in the awkward position of top-decking a talisman, missing a land drop, and having to pay 2 for what would otherwise have been a free land. Does this mean you shouldn't play with arcane signets? No, you should. Just don't slippery slope yourself into criminally underplaying land cards in your deck. Can I put a number to it? What is a criminally low amount of land for a normal commander deck? Well, that varies a lot, but in a vacuum, 33. You rob banks for a living and chain smoke mulligans if you're hovering around that number. But hey, well, all the CEDH decks I look up run like 25 land. Yes, they are robbing banks and chain smoking mulligans. That's what CEDH is all about. In actual Commander, we're trying not to have savage non-games and 20-minute political arguments until you convince everyone else to intentionally draw. With 40 land, won't I top deck too much mana? Not really. Your default state should be one where you aren't mana screwed, where you can cast your top decks, or your commander a 3rd time. From there, the copious amounts of draw you should always be running will totally eclipse a few lands worth of thinner top decks. Extra nice for easy discard decisions. What about all those utility lands like Boseiju, Arena of Glory, Inventor's Fair, Field of the Dead? Those go in during Land Pass 2. They replace your worst mana lands to keep it at 40, but notice it's already kinda less than 40, as you'll sometimes hold back Boseiju or Otawara type lands instead of playing them. Some don't tap for color, which can be awkward, especially early, and others enter tapped. So we're on a phantom 38 superposition of lands right now, but we're still safe. Pay attention to the number of colorless lands you run. After around 4, you will start to get into awkward color situations early game every once in a while. The name of the game here is consistency. Land Pass 3, we save for later, after the deck is mostly done since we need that information to make Pass 3 decisions. That's the one where you look through all your colored spells and what turn you're trying to cast them on to shift the color access of your land base away from equal access to all 3 to maybe skewed towards the makeup of your deck. For instance, a Sultai deck with lots of counter spells or double blue, or even triple blue, might want more Simic and Dimir lands and fewer Golgari ones. Maybe you have a Field of the Dead, so we can try to minimize the number of same-name lands. Snow-covered basics are good for this. Maybe you have Valakut or Emeria, and Pass 3 ends up being fairly extensive, maximizing the number of technically mountains or plains, respectively, to support them. This is also the pass where you can cut lands for budget reasons. Goodbye, Boseiju, while still never cutting the fetch Ravnica Triome core. Finally, this is indeed the pass where you can cut some lands for spells depending on the overall mana curve of what you got going on. A Feather deck with average mana value 1.5 surely doesn't need 40 land. But I can already see what you're just about to do, so please chill on this part of the step, I beg you. Remember, tapped MDFCs are spells, not lands, unless you were already going to play awful monocolor lands that enter tapped, and you weren't going to do that. So don't basically do that. Stop cutting lands for spells at 37 if you can't otherwise control yourself. 36 is actually fine, but I'm not going to tell you that, because when I say 36 is fine, what you hear is 34 is fine, and then I look at your final deck list as 28 real lands, 6 MDFCs. You're becoming a danger to yourself and others. I'm cutting you off. It's 37. But HeyWoah, I run 33 land and no ramp beyond Sol Ring Signet in my average mana value 4 deck, and it's fine, and I win all the time. I believe you. But this video is about building consistent commander decks. My next video is on confirmation bias, so you'll want to come back for that one. Exceptions. Many. Specific commanders, of course. Super low mana curve decks, there's all sorts. For instance, mono red is so garbage at ramp and card draw that you really do have to cheat on land and swing for the fences of variance, hunting for lucky hands and Big Jessica's will turns. They soft banned all the intended red equalizer cards like Blood Moon and Ruination, and hard banned others like Docksides, so sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. But red players are a special breed, they like that top deck tension. Or they hate the direction that red card advantage has gone in the last 10 years. One of the two. Alright, we're done with land, on to the fun part. Psych. Not so fast, criminal scum. The next step is ramp. This is where all your arcane signets and talismans, 3 visits and crucibles, soul rings and dark rituals tumble into the deck. Consider this ramp pass 1, as this can change quite a lot depending on commander. If they belong. Damn, doesn't that undo everything? Well, here's where you gotta make some decisions. It can't all be default templates. Remember when we talked about how important it is to rush out your 3 mana commander on turn 2? If so, play a bunch of dorks. If it's important to rush out your 4 mana commander on turn 3, then play a bunch of arcane signets. If you have to rush out your 5 mana commander, we might be hitting the limit on what is considered rushing out in even a casual format. Your setup phase might be uncomfortably encroaching into the playing stuff phase of the game. Like you just tapped out for your commander and your opponent is maybe already getting their second turn cycle with a Smothering Tithe. I don't know about that one. Regardless, these are flowchart ways of building. As is the general wisdom to not fill your mana curve with cards that cost what your commander costs. Those are guidelines for flowcharting out the most consistent turn 1, 2, 3 commander, pray, untap, okay now let's play the game. You don't have to build towards that unless it's right to. A common and powerful alternative is to build around a ramp engine. For instance, Varak Warped Sengir plus a bunch of fetch lands and Crucible Worlds. Though doing something like that is going to cost enough slots for it to start encroaching on the deck's theme maybe. Here's a tip, ramp can be a theme. Another alternative is to exclusively run ramp that punches above its weight class. In both of the definitions, Sol Ring costs 1, taps for 2. Kadama's Reach costs 1 card, gets 2 cards, which is 2 mana. The only caution I'd give for this train of thought is to keep an eye on your mana curve. Casting ramp when everyone else is done with setup and is already trying to kill you might be too late. And tapping out for some giant do-nothing this turn setup card like Mirari's Wake or Nyx Bloom Ancient is a good way to get attacked by 3 people and still lose your huge enchantment to a random Rex Sage, untapping into the same position you were in last turn. Put some guys on the board first. On to more general ramp advice. If your deck cares about number of artifacts, then the conventional wisdom of all those 2 mana talismans everyone runs seems more appropriate. If you're on a landfall strat, then go the 3 visits, Nature's Lore, Kadama's Reach route. If its lands matter, then maybe the more expensive but specific ones like Sylvan Scrying and Sowing Mycospawn. Remember that top decking an Arcane Signet is not ramp if you missed your land drop that turn. How to fix that? As always, play enough land, have enough draw. And finally, with roughly half of your deck being mana in some way, either land, ramp, or rituals, we have reached the fun part, where you have a full 50 odd cards to toss in and make it your own. But I have some advice here as well. From the start, adding is easier than cutting. Don't just spam add the deck on a bunch of broad searches. That's how you end up with a 155 card pile that you don't even want to keep building because taking that many out appears so daunting. Instead, act with purpose, from the beginning. A rule of thumb I've had to bring up many times helping new people build decks I call stay on target. Because I'm old and it's from Star Wars. Someone's building a Blink themed deck, and they add a few creatures that put 1/1 counters on their guys when they enter, and then they think, well, my creatures are going to be huge, but what if they get blocked? So they add a few cards that say creatures with counters on them have trample. And then they think, well, what if my creatures die and lose their counters? So they add Ozolith. And then they think, geez, I should be able to tutor for that. So they add Urza's Saga, and then they think, man, since I have Urza's Saga, I should add more 1-mana artifacts to tutor for. And while they're adding those artifacts, they also click on some other stuff that cares about the number of artifacts they have. Before you know it, every top deck is half of a synergy with no relation at all to the next card, and neither do anything with their commander. Stay on target, specialize, support the main strategy. This goes for alternative win cons doubly. Deus Ex Machina has absolutely nothing to do with your theme 2-card combo, as an alternative win con is generally an eye roller. Don't give up so quick on your main strat. In Magic, almost any card can win you the game in a specific enough situation, but always err on the side of a broad card that's always good, sometimes great, over a narrow card that mostly rots in your hand but has a 1% chance of being really great. In general, there are only 2 types of win more cards you should play with. 1, finishers, as you do have to kill 3 other people in Commander. And 2, pet cards that are fun. Try to keep the latter to a minimum if you can, as they compete against the former for deck space, but as a counterpoint, you can pry Apex Devastator from my cold dead hands. It's Commander after all. On a similar note, tutors. They're great and fun. I like them as a way to play multiples of some card that has no other or very few functional reprints. Some people say tutors are boring, but that depends on what you're tutoring for. If you find yourself like clockwork, so often demonic tutoring for Torment to Hailfire that you're bored to tears, just tired of always getting Torment of Hailfire even though you consider it an unsatisfying win, to the point that you're thinking about cutting demonic tutor, I got news for you. The card to take out is Torment of Hailfire. Tutors should be the combination for the lock in your silver bullet briefcase, and what you get with them should be about as varied as you enjoy. If you think tutors fundamentally go against the spirit of Singleton, then I don't know, never recast your commander, I guess. Live your ideals. Another common issue with new player decks is battlecruiser board states where no one feels like they can actually swing with anything, and everyone just stares at each other until someone draws their Craterhoof. The 7th inning stretch of bracket 2, if you will. In lower brackets, playing creatures and cards that can participate in combat, block, and everything isn't ruined if they die is a good way to progress the game and pressure life totals when things otherwise might have stalled out. Or just more draw and an asymmetrical board wipe or two. Whatever flavor you like. There's a certain class of cards I call confidence checks, and they are generally to be avoided. Cards like Mass Hysteria, Wheel of Fortune, and Living Death that let everyone do something powerful, but in total potentially help your opponents 3 times more than you. You need to be very confident that you are doing far and away the most powerful thing with symmetrical effects like this, otherwise steer clear, especially wheels. Your opponent's drawing 21 cards is basically never something I want them to do on purpose, unless you're on some Nekusar the Mindrazor strat, or Mono Red Sneak Attack trying to win that turn. There are roughly 3 phases to most Commander games: setup, doing stuff, and the endgame. How long the first 2 last is largely what defines the brackets, in my opinion. Setup is ramp and playing initial synergy pieces, plus usually but not always casting your commander. In casual Commander, this is the first 3 or 4 turns. More for bracket 2, less for bracket 4. Doing stuff is also known as playing Magic, where people's main gameplay loops happen, armies are built, engines come online, removal gets cast, creatures attack and block and die, someone board wipes, draws a bunch of cards, all that stuff. This phase can even last an hour or longer in casual pods. It's the phase where you finally get to, quote, do your thing. Endgame is where someone feels like they gotta try to win. When board states are scary or life totals get low, someone pulls ahead, or they simply top deck the old Craterhoof. which some people are bored of by now, but ways to win that end the game in one fell swoop are greatly preferential to just killing one person and then running out of gas. That person might have to end up waiting for 3 people to finish playing for an hour. It's common courtesy for your win conditions to at least try and avoid this unfortunate but not uncommon scenario. Card tags are your friend. Moxfield's got them. Get yourself some roles to subdivide into. Might I suggest the Magic 8 Ball? Card draw, removal, commander synergy, protection, ramp, pet cards that belong, win cons, and recursion. Feel free to add your own. Commanders are pretty diverse in what kind of effects they care about. Swap back and forth between sorting by card tags and mana value to keep both of those things in mind. If you graft it, it would asymptote as cost increase, but maybe with a little spike at the end for funny stuff. It is Commander after all. The lower in brackets you go, the less 1 mana cards you play in general. Again, this will vary by commander. For instance, Helga or Glarb will surely have more 4-drops than normal. Back to those 8 categories. Some things to keep in mind when building. There's a few different types of card draw, and each tends to inform or enforce how your deck wants to play. You can consider these to be diametric gradients between 2 extremes. The first is engine versus burst. Engines want to be drawn early, and burst wants to be drawn late. Pull from Eternity can bring you right back into a game that looked hopeless, but it's worse than a land in your opener. Guardian Project almost doesn't have a text box if it's your last top deck, but it'll draw you 12 cards a game if it comes down early. Rhystic Study is broken because it does both. Free cards every turn, then a burst of 5 during a stack war. I can't believe it's still legal. Anyway, a good mix of both is recommended, but err on the side of engines. We want to run smooth. The second is, it just works versus conditional. The more strings attached to your card draw, the less likely it'll save you when you need it the most. Regal Force does not look good after a Wrath of God. The third is cost, cheap versus expensive. This is simple and obvious, but one of the bigger things to consider is what happens next. Ideally, we're playing the cards we just drew, but the more expensive the draw was, the less we can do after. Hat tip, for instance, the draw at the end of turn right before you get to go, but you did have to pass your own turn with 8 mana up to do that. Last is pseudo versus real. In Commander, there really is a premium on putting actual cards into your hand, but pseudo card draw is good and can sometimes even keep a whole deck afloat. For instance, in my 6 deck, a card that mills 3 and returns a land to my hand isn't technically card draw, but it's close enough when you consider I can retrace everything in my graveyard. My graveyard is essentially a second hand worth of cards to play as long as I have a forest to discard. And my commander's alive. Notice those last 2 conditionals though. If 6 is dead or my hand has no land, you start to see why pseudo versus real is an important distinction. Just something to keep in mind when an errant Bajuka Bog erases your entire second hand. This goes for stuff like Reality Chip that lets you play off the top of your library as well. You can churn through a few of them and it's almost like drawing cards, but they come in an order you might not like, and once you hit a second land, the train stops. That doesn't mean don't play Reality Chip or 6 or Muldrotha or anything. It just means the perfect time to think about implications is now, when we're still building the deck. Number 2 is removal. You know that thing that all the content creators tell you to play more of, including me? Well, it's the thing that no one plays enough of, including me. Hey, alright. I own 4 commander decks, and the number of removal cards I run in each of them is 5, 8, 10, 14. Running enough removal isn't about counting slots, it's about figuring out a way for you to feel like you're running enough. Over time, as you play the deck, you'll know deep down whether you need more. Listen to the inner voice. And my voice. Click like and subscribe. Category notes. Artifacts and enchantments often need killing more than creatures do. Grave Hate counts as removal, so Endurance is a removal card. Being able to destroy target land in a pinch is good to have somewhere in the 99. Everyone sacrifice a creature only just barely counts as removal, maybe. You don't get to pick. Everyone loses their worst bunny token. Only in perfect situations, by chance, does it pick off what you want it to. I would almost not even count it, unless it's part of a Grave Pact Aristocrats engine where you're running 15 of them. Then it's back to being removal again, with the only downside being everyone hates playing against Aristocrats. Next up, counterspells are not removal. They are protection and are handled in that category. Sweepers are good and necessary, but don't go overboard. Asymmetrical ones are much preferred, as we're trying to score touchdowns, not delay the game, but those are more expensive, so it's a trade-off. Exile effects are valued 6 million times higher than destroy effects, which are in turn valued 12 million times higher than damage effects. Sword something, it's gone forever. Withering Torment something, half the time I expect it back on the battlefield next turn. Or it's Perforos and can't destroy it in the first place. Damage is the worst, having all the same downsides as Destroy, except big creatures laugh at you. From best to worst access to removal in general, the colors are white, green, blue equals black, very long pause, red. They got Blasphemous Act and Artifact Destruction. That's almost entirely it. Note that black recently got access to enchantment removal, but none of them are any good yet. They're playable, but not good. In the future, this will probably allow black to overtake blue on my removal list, but we'll get to it in another few years and another few cards getting printed. I know I mentioned win more in conditionals in the draw section, but there is no more important category for your cards to actually always do what they are supposed to do than in removal. All that conditional stuff, if your commander's out and a graveyard has 7 cards in it, unless they pay 3 on a Tuesday, skip it. You want the kill spell to kill the thing when you draw it. Rain or shine. Oh, one last thing. Some people eschew removal almost entirely, assuming someone else will always kill the problem permanent at the table. Kinda social engineering. These people are leeches on society and should be targeted first. Number 3, Commander Synergy. I like to play a few cards that do almost what your commander does in case he dies too many times. Also, there is such a thing as too much synergy. At a certain point, it becomes empty calories. On protection, the arms race against removal. Hexproof is often better than indestructible. Phasing out trumps everything, but a phased out creature can't block, which sometimes matters. Big, expensive protection cards are tempting, but think about playing the game. Are you holding up 5 mana every turn just in case? Counterspells count as protection. You can certainly use them like removal for things on the stack, but ultimately you're protecting yourself from losing. This might stretch the definition a bit, but I consider cards like Baleful Strix a light protection card. It's protecting you from being attacked here and there. Also, Vigilance is underrated. Level 2 protection is playing cards that stop silver bullets, so in keeping with Endurance being a removal card, it is also a protection card to target yourself in a graveyard deck in response to Bojuka Bog. They even gave it reach. Man, Endurance kinda good. Speaking of, does your deck titanically fold to 1 common hate piece? If you're a graveyard deck and anyone else in your pod is in white, will that farewell entirely send you to the Shadow Realm? It's good to think about this while you're still building. When there's a blue deck in your pod, from the beginning of the game, it is simply a countdown until they cast Cyclonic Rift. It's just going to happen eventually. What are you going to do about it? Counter it in blue, Clever Concealment in white, Pyroblast in red, not care in black because you have Cabal Coffers and we're going to win with Torment of Hailfire anyway. Even green has a Shias, all your creatures are forests, which Rifts can't bounce. Putting in an otherwise good card or 2 or 6 that also stops the most common counters you'll face is a good plan. Like Questing Beast in an aggro deck that doesn't want to get got by Moment's Peace or One Ring protection. I do want to stress that your anti-silver bullet cards should ideally be good cards anyway, that also deal with hate pieces. Number 5, Ramp. Think about the progression of the game as it relates to the cards and their costs. If your commander costs 3, playing 10 Birds of Paradise often gets you a turn 2 commander. But then you draw a bunch of birds later when you might not want to, and Wrath of God kills half your mana. Is the trade-off worth it? You decide. Same thing with a 4 mana commander and a bunch of 2 mana ramp to get it out turn 3. Are you trying to turbo it out, or do you want it to be safe? What kind of deck are you trying to be? Elsewhere in the video I talk about ramp, so let's talk about not playing ramp. The number of ramp cards I play in my 4 decks are 23, 13, 12, and 4. What a spread. I like ramp, obviously. But in Ardent Crom I only run Soul Ring, Mox Opal, Thought Vessel, and Smothering Tithe. Why don't I play Arcane Signet, 3 Talismans, Felwar Stone, all the rest? Because I'm already trying to play Magic on turn 2. I want Cloud to curve into Buster Sword, or Pure Steel Paladin into Swiftfoot Boots with an island untapped for Swan Song. Signets are nice, but they would clog up my early turns. I got 38 land and a bunch of draw. I'll just make land drops, it's fine. Plus I can spike ahead later if Reaver Cleaver connects. Number 6, pet cards. Let them in. This is what EDH was overtly designed to enable. And for all my never do this, it's bad, don't do that, of this whole guide, remember that Commander is for fun. Commander is not just casual, it is explicitly anti-competitive. You are asked to build a deck with restraint. My Glarb deck would be a lot better with 9 counterspells in it. I don't care. I want to cast Portal to Phyrexia. But here's the thing. I do cast Portal to Phyrexia, because I built a consistent ramp engine that easily casts cards for 9 mid-game. It has consistent draw and a tutor or two to get it in my hand when I want it. And it has some graveyard synergies to take advantage of it when it's in play. My pet cards are supported by the deck they are built around, and they work and they're fun. You can see where I'm going with this. 16 pet cards that are simply just awful. But you find funny for some reason, that languish in your hand, turn after turn, game after game, because they're too specific, or too expensive, or don't fit in your theme, or don't even really do anything when you cast them. That's worse than not running them at all. Celebrate pet card inclusion. But if they don't translate to good gameplay, then cut them when they need to be cut. Circle the wagons around a few of them, give them proper support, and enjoy. But don't force it. In fact, that's mostly how I build commander decks. Like going backwards through a maze. Man, wasn't it funny to Cabal Coffers Haunting Echoes people with that jank-ass Type 1.5 deck? What was it? Trainwreck? That's Glarb. Man, Crucible Exploration Life in the Loam was so satisfying. That's 6. Stoneforge, Batterskull, and Jace got me feeling nostalgic. That's Ardencrom. Like dinosaur bones becoming plastic toys in a Walmart. The original cards might not survive to the final version. I don't run Haunting Echoes or Staff of Domination in Glarb, but the feeling is still there. Number 7, win cons. A cool or satisfying win is the goal here, both in deck building and at the table. If the only point was to win, you would just play Thassa's Oracle in every deck, and argue over the stack for half an hour, and cheat on camera every week. Anyway, try to pick a win con that fits your deck's theme or flavor. The most popular and generic 2-card combo in your colors is a bit of an eye roller when it has nothing otherwise to do with your deck. We're trying to be more interesting than that. And finally, recursion number 8. This is probably your smallest category. Could be as simple as 1 Eternal Witness in a Crucible world, or it could be the whole theme of your deck. I don't have much advice here. I just like getting my stuff back. So that's it on categories. Any other general advice I can give? I never really mentioned budget except for that one time. I can already hear the comments typing away. Johnny1995 telling us to play with 9 fetch lands every deck like we're made of money. 1. You chose a hobby game famously more expensive than Warhammer 40k to get into, and then you want to complain about price. Brother, you walked into a Michelin star restaurant of your own volition, Burger King right down the street. That being said, 2, printer go burr. Or play on TTS. Is proxying cards a bitch move? Absolutely yes. But you're also a bitch for complaining about proxies. Catch 22. Let your conscience be your guide. And 3, budget-focused videos and channels are the most numerous form of Magic content in the entire world. Budget decks can be very good or very strong if that's what you care about. I haven't found one that's particularly fun to play personally. I'd rather go to the dentist than play a Precon in Bracket 2, but different strokes for different folks. This guide's about making fun and consistent commander decks. I'll leave the budget advice to the experts. However, going monocolor is a good start. Oh, what about game changers? Put whatever ones you want in, up to limit 3. As of 8/12/25, my advice on which ones to play is the following. If you're watching this later, the list has hopefully changed. Blue. Cyclonic Rift first. Probably the number 1 auto-include above any other game changer no matter how many other colors you're running. A sweeper so asymmetrical that it actually ends games instead of prolongs them. 11 out of 10. Rhystic Study wins on power level, but it's annoying to play against, so I personally don't. Fierce Guardianship was a bizarre addition to the list as a twice conditional 1-for-1 protection spell. But the more important to your game plan your commander is, and the more expensive your commander starts, the more likely you have to bite the bullet and just pay the tax. Maybe Mystical Tutor if it's essential to your strat, but you can go without it. Urza, same thing, but for artifact decks. Consecrated Sphinx, same thing, but for absolutely degenerate cantrip gooners that mainline powdered cardboard. Of course I know him. He's me. Skip the rest. White, Smothering Tithe first. The floor is you get a Black Lotus every turn cycle. The ceiling is the moon. Teferi's Protection is next, even though it's annoying, depends on your archetype though. Enlightened Tutor feels more necessary for white than Mystical does for blue. Still a maybe. Skip the rest. Black, Demonic Tutor first. It's a shame tutors get punished for the cards they can find, but it's such a central part of Black's identity, and the 4+ mana alternative ones are so shit that I'd easily bite the bullet here. Vampiric Tutor, same thing. Ad Nauseam and Necro are more for pure combo decks, and you shouldn't be blasting pure combo in bracket 3 anyway. Opposition Agent is a CEDH card, skip it. Bowmasters is a menace in 1v1 formats, but truly whatever in Commander. But it's on the list anyway for some reason. It's very not good enough to take up your GC choice. Easy skip. And skip the rest. I know I only said take 2, but if you're in mono black, play the One Ring. It makes you pay life to draw cards. You can't fool me, that's a black card. Red, Deflecting SWAT is a card I'm baffled made the list. I actually think they added it because Red's list was so small they got embarrassed. Still, SWAT's an auto-include that potentially creates funny Commander moments 10 out of 10. Jeska's Will, basically the same thing. It's one of only like 5 truly good red cards, so they had to put it on the list, and you have to put it in your deck. Underworld Breach is a combo card, same note as Ad Nauseam, skip it. Gamble is literally bad, unless you're using it as an Entomb, which is a card that is not on the Game Changer list, by the way, but in red I guess it is, skip. Like black, I only listed 2, and along those same lines, if you're in mono red, put in the One Ring as your third. Unlike black, you will notice that the One Ring is not a red card, but that's because it's good. Green, honestly skip them all. Gaia's Cradle is a CEDH combo card, very much not a bracket 3 card. Food Chain is for combo decks. Seedborn Muse is annoying to play against and hogs all the game time. You got plenty of creature tutors, you don't need these 3. If you're in mono green, I guess pick One Ring first, then Natural Order maybe, and a third at random if you even feel like it. Multicolor, Aura Shards is very strong, but in green-white you already dumpster artifact enchantment players by simply existing. Don't play bracketed commanders. If you water them down enough to be palatable for bracket 3, 1, they'll still be too good, and 2, no one will believe you when you say yours isn't like the others. Nor should they. Skip all. Colorless. The One Ring. Probably my number 1 pick overall if you aren't in blue, otherwise it's pick 2. Unlike Rhystic Study. I hope they don't ban this card because it's actually fun. In 1v1 people play 4 of these to keep resetting the counters due to the legend rule, but in Commander people actually die to life loss all the time, it's funny. Feel the Dead in decks that happen to support it already or in Lands Matter. Despite how much people seem to hate this card, it's not really worth a slot. Skip the rest. If you're in pure colorless, first I would advise against doing that, and then I'd tell you to round out your choices after One Ring with Ancient Tomb and Monovault. Don't get too bent out of shape over Game Changers. I could build a technically bracket 2 that has none of them that destroys bracket 4 tables. It would just be a dick move. And also it wouldn't be technically bracket 2, because everyone doing those thought experiments ignores the most important single rule of brackets. The rule of intent. The whole point is getting you to think about it and put it in the place it belongs. And thinking about it is also the whole point of my video. I'll leave you with some final thoughts. I wrote a 9,000 word essay, recorded and edited a 40-minute video with 330 magic card images on the subject, but it's not that serious. Being an enjoyable person to play against will get you farther in Commander than any deck building choice, indeed in life. Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, toss me a sub on Twitch or a membership on YouTube. I got a Discord too, it's pretty cool I guess.